So if you know the general discourse around hustling or the grind, you know all the suggestions are basically like expand your mind, work out, get networking, meditate, take breaks, but not too long or too many, stay focused, work hard always. And that always is the key, right? Hustle culture is the idea that on any given day you have to dedicate as much of your time and energy as possible to working. In general, it seems like this is a situation faced by a lot of young people, especially the ones I know around me. No one likes hustle culture, but we're all either subconsciously feeling the pressure from it, or we're trying to fight it really hard and feeling the guilt that comes with constantly working and recognizing that you're focusing on work too much but not being able to really rectify that. Maybe this high energy, constantly doing things and trying to do it all at once kind of lifestyle works for some people, and I'm really happy for them. But for me personally, it's been one of the most harmful things I have ever experienced in my life. So based on my experience and those of people I've spoken to around me, here's just a gentle reminder of why hustle culture is so toxic and why constantly trying to hold your worth up to how much work you're doing is really, really bad for mental health. It's a whole saga, but I've narrowed it down to 5 succinct reasons because I tend to talk a lot and this will keep me on track. Number 1, it's all black and white. Where is the nuance? Hustle culture feels like a very all or nothing space. You're either successful or you're not. It's very extreme based. There's absolutely no gray areas that people talk about. You're either thriving or you're failing, you're rich or you're poor. It's all these stark contrasts, right? Which is not how most people live their lives. The reality is we're all living in the gray for the most part of our lives. We're generally successful at some things, thriving at other things, and sometimes failing. Sometimes we're absolutely in the quicksand, but there's shades of all of this happening. It's never one thing or the other completely in contrast. And that reality of some good days and some bad is totally normal and okay. Why have we come to think that productivity is always going to be a thing in our lives? Who put that in our heads? It's so unfair. Point number 2. There's a very coerced definition of success that comes to mind when we talk about people succeeding at the hustle. But success is going to look different for different people at different times, right? Like my bandwidth at the times when I'm super depressed is very different from when I'm not all up in my feelings. So I'm going to be able to succeed at things a lot more easily when I'm not dealing with a whole bunch of other shit. But hustle culture pushes this one standard ideal, which is generally making more money and climbing the professional ladder. Number 3, and this one really bothers me. Like all of these bother me, but this one really gets under my skin, is the shortened timelines that add to the feeling of constant pressure. So let me explain what I mean. Hustle culture and hustle porn, which is everywhere on social media. Wherever you look, on Instagram, in every nook and cranny, everyone is doing great. It makes me feel like I'm always running out of time. As if not making it by 25 somehow means I've failed at life. Sometimes I feel really bad for going to film school, but not having made any award-winning films even though I'm turning 24 soon. Right, that sounds ridiculous when you hear it, right? Like, oh, this person's in their mid-20s and they're feeling like they haven't accomplished enough. But then I have to remind myself every time this feeling hits me that not everyone starts thriving at the same age. My theory is that this is because of the general fascination / borderline obsession, kind of creepy honestly, with young billionaires and child celebrities and just young people in general who've become really, really successful and rich by working hard, some more than others. And I specifically put working hard in quotes because putting in the hard work is such a small fraction of the whole picture. But this blanket idealization of young public figures makes it feel, no matter how subconscious by the way, makes it really feel like a person's worth is directly proportional to how quickly in their life they can achieve really big goals. Like, oh, Emma Chamberlain bought a $4 million house. Good for her, but not everyone should be living by those standards. These are the struggles that I constantly go through in my head, and now you're privy to it. Welcome to this wonderland up here. The next one, number 4, is the negativity and toxic positivity associated with the whole hustling space. Up until a few months ago, I was hustling hard. Like, I hadn't taken a break where I did nothing for an extended period of time for almost 22 years. I had no idea what doing nothing meant. I was constantly working on schoolwork, YouTube, building an acting reel over the last few years, making music, and starting a business all at once. Safe to say, I had too much on my plate, but I was trying to meet the highest expectations because I wanted to do the best I could at everything I could. Inevitably, when I started falling short on some things and not succeeding as much at things, I started to feel really, really bad. There was a lot of self-judgment and berating myself and guilt for not doing well enough, for not being good enough. All of those really negative emotions, they made productivity so hard. And when you start judging yourself, it makes getting back on track with doing the things you want to do even harder. Love the irony. Sometimes the mind just has these amazing gems that it throws at you in life, and it's like, why, brain? Just work. So since negativity was trying to take over, I figured, hey, let's try to be positive as much as I can be. No matter what is going on in my head, I'm gonna try to stay positive and stay on task. Safe to say, it did not work. That is the definition of toxic positivity, when you try to ignore complicated mental health spaces just to put up a positive front and seem as if everything is okay. Toxic positivity real bad. Because brain don't function like that. Brain doesn't like it when you try to pretend things are great when they're actually not. It just makes it so much harder to be productive. So both extremes, too much negativity, too much positivity, they were not doing well for me. I was so mentally unstable, and even worse, I stopped progressing because I was afraid of trying new things for the fear of failing. Kind of just stagnated, and all of those thoughts and feelings just weighing down on me made me so burnt out. It was really, really traumatic. Number 5, last one. And this is personally for me the biggest takeaway from this whole exercise of researching for this video and making this video talking about all of these thoughts. Social disparities. There is very, very limited conversation around the inequalities that cause different social groups to be affected very differently by hustle culture. I'm an Indian girl who grew up in a mostly middle class to upper middle class family, which means I have been socialized very differently from, let's say, a rich white boy who grew up in America. The concept of hustling, i.e. giving the most you can at any given point, even at the expense of your own well-being, is obviously going to affect a privileged person way less adversely than a less privileged person, because privileged people's efforts gain more results. That's just the bare bones of it. Two people, one is more socially privileged, the other one less so, both people putting in the same amount of effort, dedication, hard work, focus, all of those things, but one person is going to get further than the less privileged person. That's just the social structure that we live in. So why would the more privileged person have to think about hustle culture? Why would they have to worry about burnout from hustling too hard? Of course both people are working hard, but one person is getting through doorways much more easily than the other. And this disparity is what I have not seen talked about in the hustle culture space, and especially spaces where hustle culture is held up as the norm and it is glorified and glamorized. Yeah, I'm looking at you, finance bros and lawyers in New York City who are putting in 80-hour work weeks. Think about social disparity the next time you're hustling, maybe. Just a suggestion. So, all said and done, what's a doable, actually doable way of counteracting the ingrained hustle culture that we're all fighting? My answer, self-compassion. Every time I hear the voice in my head saying, you're not good enough, you're not doing enough, I remind myself, hey, I'm doing the best I can, and that has to be enough. I don't think it means being complacent. Like, set high goals for yourself, but also, I guess, alongside that, set realistic expectations has been useful for me. My motto is basically, meet yourself where you're at. It honestly helps me just to even say it out loud every time I start to get that crushing feeling of inadequacy. It just allows me to treat myself with a little more kindness, you know? Whether that means making myself my favorite cup of tea, or buying myself some flowers, just doing something nice that's just for myself. Sometimes meeting myself where I'm at can actually mean working more, because that's what my body and mind need in the moment. They need that structure, they need that push, which is well and good. But keeping self-compassion in mind in general just allows me to be more aware of my needs and not judge myself for feeling a certain way. Ultimately, you know, just holding myself to my own standards and no one else's. So that's it from me. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. I hope you found some solace in this and maybe some thought-provoking bits and pieces. Let me know what you thought, because I was really scared to make this video because I didn't want it to be preachy, and I just wanted to put my experience out there so that everyone else feels less alone in a way, to know that there's someone else out there feeling this way as well. That's about it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.